McLaren Honda. Okay, Ferrari and Williams have both won one each so far, so it's less one-sided than 1988 already, but McLaren have won the other 6 and still look like the team to beat out there. Prost's complaints about the team mechanically favouring Senna are looking a little silly right now after 4 consecutive DNFs for the Brazilian and a 20-point lead for the Frenchman, but that's not an insurmountable lead only halfway into the season. The new 6-speed transverse gearbox failed Senna at Silverstone, and there will be a bit of nervousness at Woking given Ferrari's gearbox woes, but Ron's team are usually pretty good at sorting out mechanical troubles. Tyrrell Ford. A definite improvement from last year, the new car looks good, and indeed Alboreto even put it on the podium just before leaving the team. Whether that was purely a sponsorship clash or a personal issue between Michele and Ken may never be known, but once more the team have fallen on their feet with the discovery of Jean Alesi, in similar circumstances indeed to Alboreto's arrival in the sport in 1982. Jonathan Palmer's generally been better than his teammates in qualifying, but more anonymous on race day. Williams Renault. After a year in the doldrums, the Williams team have seen a remarkable return to form with Renault power. Thierry Boutson's win in Canada may have been somewhat fortuitous, but it was well-deserved and popular, while Riccardo Patrese is looking like a driver transformed this year, and he'll be hoping he can finally get his 3rd win this year, 6 years after his last one. There's still a new car in the works, and the new evolution of the Renault engine needs some wrinkles ironing out, but the team could have a strong late season. Brabham Judd. Came out of the blocks really strongly, but after the heroics of Monaco, things seem to have dropped off a little, which, combined with the arrival and departure within a week of Teddy Mayer as boss, suggest all isn't quite well behind the scenes. Nonetheless, without the need to pre-qualify from now on, with 2 fine drivers both signed on for 1990, a works engine deal and finances assured too, they will be keen to push on in the second half of the year. Arrows Ford. Definite case of mixed fortunes for Jackie Oliver's team. With a bit of luck, Warwick could have won in Canada, while Cheever failed to even qualify in Britain just 3 races after standing on the podium in Phoenix. Eddie is certainly finding the car doesn't suit him, and his qualifying performances have been pretty awful. Part of the problem is simply that his height makes the cockpit more cramped with the new safety rules, and that's a problem only a totally new chassis can solve. Ultimately, the A11 is a decent car, rather underpowered compared to the works teams, and realistically, a midfield runner that might score points occasionally. Lotus Judd. Another awful season for the veteran team. It seems so long ago that Ayrton Senna was running races for them, but it was actually only 2 years. The chassis continues to be a problem, along with the fact that the Judd V8 engine is some 80 horsepower, 60 kilowatts down on the Honda V10, and the experiment with the 5-valve Tickford head hadn't really helped. Nelson Piquet seems demotivated and tired, Nakajima's just not good enough, and in the aftermath of the British Grand Prix, the Chapman family, who still own the team, had had enough and removed, or rather persuaded to leave, both team manager Peter Waugh and chairman Fred Bushell, the latter just before he was due to be charged in the fallout from the DeLorean affair. In came Tony Rudd, a long-time Lotus employee, usually a technical man. It'll be interesting to see how he steps up to run the team. March Judd. A frustrating season so far after the team's excellent 1988. The new car is clearly fast, taking the fastest lap at Paul Ricard is no mean feat, but it has proved unreliable, with gearbox and engine problems proving a particular Achilles heel. Adrian Newey is hoping to fix the former at least by strengthening the casing for the internal gear cluster, but the engine issue is trickier to solve, with the electrical components being the main issue. The new car has only finished twice since its introduction in Monaco, and on a couple of occasions now Gugelmin has qualified well, only to have his car break on the grid and have to start from the pit lane. Ozella Ford. Frustrating for similar reasons to March. The little Ozella team clearly have a half-decent chassis and at least one good driver. Nicola Larini has frequently looked good, only to break down before he could finish well, while Piercarlo Gonzani has never even threatened to pre-qualify and looks distinctly second best. The new chassis and improved Pirelli tyres, and Brabham and Dallara no longer hogging all the PQ spots, give them some optimism, but it's looking like another lean year for Ozella. Benetton Ford. Those who thought Nannini wasn't ready to be a team leader have had to eat their words, as he's definitely stepped up and has qualified consistently well, with 2 third places and 2 other points finishes, a good haul considering he was using last year's cars for most of it. The new one looks even better, and the compact Ford HB V8 engine seems like it might be an unexpectedly powerful competitor to the V10 and V12 power plants in the other top teams. In the second car, Johnny Herbert started brightly, but the team probably made the right decision in replacing him. Pirro hasn't had much of a chance to shine yet, but once he finds his feet and gets a new car, we'll see. BMS Scuderia Italia Dallara Ford. The other red Italian team are having a cracking year so far, with 2 cars in the points and 1 on the podium in Canada being a particular high point. Although De Cesaris has had the most points and hasn't had to go through pre-qualifying, it's been Alex Caffey turning heads more often with his performances. Alex will join Andrea in skipping PQ from now on, and the team will need to focus now on improving their reliability to convert those good grid slots into results. Minardi Ford. The new M189 chassis is certainly pretty, even if it doesn't go quite as fast as it looks. Since entering F1 in 1985, Minardi had only ever scored 1 point, and they hadn't finished at all so far in 1989, so scoring 3 at Silverstone to escape pre-qualifying was even more of an achievement. Of the 2 drivers, Martini looks more confident, with Sala struggling a bit, having failed to qualify on a couple of occasions. Having now demonstrated that with a bit of reliability the cars can finish well, like their compatriots in red, they need to work on that. Ligier Ford. Well, the new car looks better than last year's, which isn't admittedly saying much, and both drivers have actually scored points, which is a definite improvement. But if the car is indeed heavily based on 1988's March, then it doesn't seem to go nearly as well. Olivier Gouillard has seemed the livelier of the 2 drivers, with Arnoux having only qualified for half the races so far and looking increasingly out of sorts. There are persistent rumours that René will either go or get the push at the end of the year. Ferrari. Nigel Mansell hit the ground running and earned himself a place in the hearts of all Ferrari fans, but since then the problems have come thick and fast, mainly with the revolutionary semi-automatic gearbox. If and when the team can get it working, it could be a game changer, but so far it's just resulted in DNF after DNF. That the car is fast is evidenced by the fact that Mansell hasn't finished lower than second in it, but he's only finished 3 times out of 8, and poor Berger hasn't finished at all. The design team are continuing to work on the problems and hope they can finish the season strongly and be well placed for a return to the top in 1990. Larousse Lola Lamborghini. The untried Chrysler-supported Lamborghini V12 was always going to be a bit of a gamble. It's got a lot of power, and in Alio's hands it has often qualified well, but the engine has real reliability problems and a reputation for leaving oil slicks all over the track. The team's frustration boiled over after Canada, with both drivers being sacked before Alio had to be sheepishly rehired, but Dalmas hadn't qualified for 4 races on the bounce and was clearly not really recovered from his bout of Legionella last year, so while harsh, it was probably the right decision. Eric Bernard has done respectably in his first 2 races, finishing 11th on his debut, but we'll see how he goes for the remainder of the season. Coloni Ford. To nobody's great surprise, Roberto Moreno will be joining his teammate Rafanel in pre-qualifying for the rest of the season, which is not great for the team as PHR's only made it to qualifying proper once so far. The new chassis is tidy enough but lacks straight-line speed and has all the usual new car teething troubles. Sadly, it looks like it's going to be another lean year for Enzo Coloni's people. Eurobrunn Judd. There's not really a lot to say about Eurobrunn, given Gregor Wojtek only pre-qualified once at the first race in Brazil, and even then failed to make it into the race. A new car at Silverstone, George Wrighton's ER189, didn't help much, though the switch to orange Jägermeister branding was at least eye-catching, and even with the decent Judd CV engine, it's just too slow, and Wojtek doesn't have the experience. Zakspeed Yamaha. Talk of Yamaha coming into F1 to challenge Honda seems a little foolish now, as Zakspeed have only started 1 race so far in Brazil and failed to pre-qualify on every other occasion. And not just failed, they've mostly been right down the bottom of the timing sheets, seconds adrift of even the slowest pre-qualifiers. It's difficult to see that changing anytime soon. Onyx Ford. Mike Earle's successful junior Formula team had a tough time getting into F1, only finishing their cars the morning of their launch, then hastily packing them off to Rio to start the season. And it showed, with neither car making it out of PQ for the first 3 races. But slowly they've improved, with the veteran and rookie combo behind the wheel proving successful, and with a change in team manager at Phoenix, with co-founder Greg Field returning to the team to replace Martin Dixon. The team looked like they were starting to find their feet. But there are also dark clouds on the horizon, as the majority shareholder and Gachot's paymaster Jean-Pierre Van Rossum seems to be spending lavishly on everything but F1, dropping $20 million on a private jet just before Phoenix, while questions are being asked about exactly how his Moneytron firm makes its money and whether it can really predict the stock market. Real Ford. Dana's fortuitous fourth at Phoenix was enough to keep them from slipping into pre-qualifying, which will be a boost for young Volker Weidler, who's been all at sea so far and has failed to make the cut once. Neither driver has exactly impressed excitable team owner Günther Schmidt though, and he threatened to do a LaRousse and fire both of them before the British Grand Prix. Given Weidler was bottom of the PQ times and Dana bottom of the qualifying times, he probably didn't see anything to change his mind, so whether both will still be driving for their home race in Hockenheim remains to be seen. AGS Ford. It's been one calamity after another for the little French team over the last 12 months or so, with major sponsor Bouygues pulling the rug out from under them, and then losing long-time driver Philippe Streff, who came through the junior formula with them, to a dreadful accident just before the start of the season. Gabriele Tarquini has proved a more than able replacement, but his single point from Mexico isn't enough to prevent him from dropping into PQ for the second half of the season. Who knows how much of a chance Joe Winkelhock in the second car ever had, given the extremely limited resources the team had. Dalmas might speak French and fit in more culturally, but if he's also not at 100% fitness, he may not be much of an improvement.